Hey, what's up, guys? It's Bakes here, and thank you for joining me for my 100th episode of my random horror reviews, which is crazy to me, finally at 100 episodes in this series. That also means that I've done 100 plus horror movie reviews on this channel because I also did my 31 Days of Horror series. But like I said, it's crazy that now I'm at episode 100 in probably the most featured series that I have here on my channel. So first of all, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone out there, my subscribers, and not just my subscribers, but the people who regularly tune into my channel and watch my content and support it, because it really does mean a lot. I've said this before, but the reason why I started doing horror movie content on YouTube was just as a hobby, something to occupy my time outside of work and, my other things that I do for leisure and everything. And I love talking about horror movies. I love sharing them with people. I love discussing them with the horror community, and this channel has let me do that. And it's just crazy to think that, people do tune into my content and support it and seem to be enjoying it. So thank you for that, guys. I would have been doing this channel regardless, if I had 10 subscribers, or now I think I have a little over 300, which is just crazy. So as I said, it really is a nice feeling to know that people are enjoying my content. And yeah, again, I'm very grateful and lucky that I have people doing that. So thank you for that, guys. But leading up to episode 100, I did say that it was going to be a viewer's choice episode. So all you needed to do was get into the comments leading up to this episode and suggest a horror movie that you'd like to see me review for episode 100. Now, I kind of knew that there weren't going to be a shit ton of suggestions, just because in general I don't have a lot of people comment on my videos, so I knew the suggestions weren't going to be flooding in, but by the end of it I did have a nice handful of movies suggested to me. The people commenting suggestions in the comments were sort of the usual suspects, the usual channel names that I see pop up on my videos in general, so it was nice to see those people get involved. But I did say I wasn't going to play any favorites with any, people that comment on my video. All the suggestions were going to be written down, go into a hat, and I was going to pull it out random. As I said, I wasn't going to favor any movie or any person suggesting a movie. But the person who ended up winning, I think, was a good fit, because this person has supported my channel like constantly. He pretty much comments on maybe every second video, just showing support, or putting in his 2 cents on what he thinks of the movie that I'm reviewing or whatever. He's always just been a great support to this channel. So I did say I was going to put out the name of the winner who suggested the movie, and that person is, hopefully I'm saying his channel name right, Chi-Town Bud. Thank you, buddy. Again, all the support that you show me. I think it was very fitting that even though it was random, you got the movie suggested for episode 100. And the movie that he picked for episode 100 was 2014's The Editor. I had never seen this movie before, but I have heard a fair bit about it, so I was very excited to get into this one. But again, thank you to Chi-Town Bud for suggesting this movie, and all the support you give me. So let's get into this one. Like I said, I had never seen this movie before, but I remember there was a lot of big hype surrounding this one when it came out back in 2014. The first thing that I heard from people when this movie came out, that it was a very good indie flick. It was worth checking out. A lot of indie films, sometimes you end up skimming over them because they're just not as impactful as films in the mainstream, but a lot of people were like, you got to check this one out. Then I heard a lot of people saying that it was a great homage to Giallo films, and then I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. But then only kind of recently I've heard a lot of people say this movie's actually really funny. So from all that info that I gathered over time, I had no idea what to expect with this movie, how to approach this one, because I'm like, is it a horror comedy? Is it a straight up serious Giallo? I really didn't know, but yeah, that was sort of my thoughts leading into this one. So let's get into the plot for 2014's The Editor. So this movie, I don't think it actually says, but I presume it takes place in the 70s. And it's about a film crew making a Giallo movie, and our main character is the editor, and he's the one, splicing this movie together, putting it together. However, the cast of the film and a few people working on the crew and whatever start to be killed off, and the editor is sort of our main suspect of who is doing it. Like a typical Giallo, it's sort of a police procedural, and we're trying to figure out who is killing these people on the set of this movie. So that's pretty much our plot for the editor there. Obviously, it goes into a bit more detail, but I'm not going to go too far into it. Let's get into my thoughts of 2014's The Editor. So like I said in my introduction, hearing so many different things over time about this movie, it being an indie flick, it being actually really funny, it being a Giallo, I didn't really know what to expect leading into this movie, but 5 minutes in, and it really just hit me over the head. It's pretty much all of those things wrapped into one, and it actually does it really well. It's pretty well balanced between all of those things. It doesn't seem like one really outweighs the other. And what I mean by that is, to me, you get really engaged into the mystery of who is committing these murders, but then it's also really funny, but the humour and jokes don't take you out of genuinely being intrigued in the mystery of what's going on. At least in my opinion, it didn't. And the humour, I do think in this movie is genuinely funny, but also a lot of the laughs on my behalf came from the nods that they give to Italian cinema and Giallos in particular, because it equally pays homage, but then also pokes fun at the subgenre while also keeping you on your toes with Easter eggs that you would typically see in films of that subgenre. Like there were moments of eye stuff and eye stabbing, which is very Italian, but obviously it reminds you of Lucio Fulci. He's a director that obviously comes to mind when you think of eye stuff, like think of Zombie and, movies like that where there's always seems to be something going into someone's eye. But then there's moments of neons and colour pops, which to me just reminded me straight of Argento. So obviously the people working on this movie have a great respect for Giallos and Italian filmmaking, because that just bled through in this film. Now, like I said earlier, this movie is a love letter of sorts to Italian cinema, in particular Giallos, and it actually has a lot of the typical story elements that you would normally see in a standard Giallo. Like I brought up before, it being a police procedural and us following a cop for a large portion of this movie's runtime, a faceless black glove killer committing the murders, a crazy reveal, which is very standard of the more ridiculous real life Giallos, where the killer is revealed and it really could have been anybody, and you're just kind of like, what the fuck, how were we meant to know? And then an insane nonsensical reveal or final twist right towards the end as well. But even the little things in this movie that don't really feel like little things because of how excessively they are used in this one. The first thing that immediately grabbed me within the first 5 minutes of watching this movie is the movie has dubbing for about half the cast, which again is very common in Giallos and Italian films and just European films of the time in general. But a lot of the cast who are being dubbed are actually English-speaking actors, so they don't need to be dubbed, but it's trying to be authentic and a little bit over the top to what a Giallo is. And that was the first thing in this movie, like I said, that really made me go, okay, alright, I know what movie I'm expecting now, I've got my head around it, I know what game they're playing, and it was just so fucking funny. But even more tropes of the genre on from that, the overacting, the synth score in the background, neon colors, sex scenes, the fullest of full frontal nudity that you can do, red herrings galore, like so many just fucking clues sprinkled in there, some ridiculous, some genuine, awkward dialogue and excessive slapping of women. All of that is done deliberately and over the top, scaled up for comedic effect, but as I said, very feeling of a typical Giallo that you would see from 70s Italy. Moving on, I thought the cast in this movie also did an amazing job. Like, everyone in this movie was good, and everyone was also really funny at the right times and sort of played into it. And what I mean by that is I feel like the cast sort of knew what type of movie was being made and lent into the ridiculous side of it, and it looks like they had fun. Hopefully they did. It seems like it translates like that while watching. Typical Italian approach too, but all the women in this movie were beautiful, and like I said before, there's a lot of nudity from the girls and guys, so you're going to see a lot of naked bodies. But story-wise, like I said earlier as well, was actually pretty cool, and the mystery was pretty engaging while being able to weave through the jokes and not be swept under them. I do feel like there were moments approaching the third act where it was losing me just a little bit because by that point there was so much going on in the movie, and then on top of that there's so many over the top elements because everything is amped up a scale for comedic effect, where it was kind of wearing me down a little bit. But by the time we did get into that third act and we were at the final showdown and the reveal of who the killer was, I thought that was fucking awesome. Like, that's been imprinted in my brain since I watched this 2 nights ago. So that was a lot of fun. I did have a hunch that the reveal was going to be a kick in the balls and one of those out of nowhere reveals, because that is typical of Jello. Sometimes the more ridiculous ones, like I brought up before, sometimes you're watching a standard Jello film and the reveal is done and you're like, how the fuck were we meant to know it was this person? That person was in the movie 45 minutes ago for a span of 2 minutes. They had like one line of dialogue and you're telling me that's the killer. Like, it just seems so bizarre. I'm not saying that's what happened in this movie, but I did have a hunch that's what was going to go on. So wrapping up this review for my 100th episode, I had a good time watching this one, and I think it really did help, like I said, in the first 5 minutes, realizing and knowing what type of movie this was going to be. I honestly felt like a weight come off my shoulders because I'm like, okay, this is going to be a more fun approach than what I honestly kind of expected. I don't think I mentioned, but the gore and effects, they were like really awesome in this movie. Like, all the gore and effects, like, really solid from memory. And again, I feel like it stuck true because the effects and gore felt very 70s. Almost like they probably could have done better effects, but back in the day you couldn't make your effects so crisp and so clean. So it's almost like they did it deliberately and stuck true, and I really liked that as well. The cast did a great job. The team putting this movie together obviously had good knowledge of Jellos and the subgenre and the tropes that make them so likable and charming. Like, that's what I find most of all with old school Italian films and Jellos and everything. For me at least, I find them always to be really charming, and there's something genuinely endearing about them. Even if they're not the best movie, there's always like a little lingering thing with you where you're like, okay, that was kind of nice. But to wrap this up, to give The Editor from 2014 a rating out of 10, I'm going to give it a 7.5. Like, as I said, I had a fun time with this one. I understand why a lot of people really like this movie. A 7.5, I think that's a good score out of 10. I wanted to say thank you again to Chi-Town Bud for suggesting this movie. But most of all, it gives me a good opportunity to say thank you for always supporting this channel. Like I said, it was random, it was completely random, but it was really fitting for you to have your movie pulled from this draw, because you've always been so supportive. So thank you, buddy, for suggesting this movie. I really did enjoy it. And again, thank you to everyone who supports my channel. I don't want to sound like a broken record or like I'm sucking anyone's dick or whatever, but it really does mean a lot that a lot of people tune into my channel and support it. Like I said, it just means a lot because, I love talking about horror movies. I'm sure you guys love discussing them too, and just having a community to do that, I think is pretty neat. So let me know your thoughts of The Editor from 2014, and maybe if you want, just suggest some more horror movies you'd like to see me review one day in the comments below. Doesn't mean I will, because there's not a 200th episode coming up anytime soon. I'm sure that will be far down the track, but feel free to suggest some. Maybe you'll remind me of a movie on my shelf that I haven't checked out in a while, and I'll do it for just a random episode through and through. But thank you guys for tuning into episode 100. Again, really means a lot, and I'll see you for another video soon, I'm sure. Bye, guys.